back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Madison, and today I am doing my postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome diagnosis story. That lighting got very weird. I'm so sorry. If you're new here, I have POTS, Gastroparesis, Hypermobile, Ehlers-Danlos, and Lupus. I have been requested to do a series kind of on my my personal diagnosis stories. So I'm starting with POTS. I did a fibromyalgia one, and at one point I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. This was before I got diagnosed with anything else, and I didn't have any testing done. But I've already done that video. If you want to check it out, I'll link it up here. But today we're talking about POTS. I'm not really going to go into a symptoms list in this video because I feel like that would make it extremely long. But if you want to hear like specific symptoms that I personally had before getting diagnosed with POTS, I'd be happy to do a separate video. Obviously, I will be talking about some of the symptoms because they just kind of go along with my story, but to get into specifics, I just feel like it'll be better in a whole other video. And I'm also going to do a video on things that I have that help me with POTS. So if you're interested in those, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, stick around. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So my POTS journey diagnosis actually started when I was about 6 years old. I'm 23 now, but when I was about 6 years old, that was the first time that I passed out, and that was at like a field day at my school, and they told my parents that I had low blood sugar, which we're not really sure why they told us that because I had no indication of low blood sugar. I was tested for like diabetes, all this different stuff. Everything came back fine, so we're not really sure where they came up with that, but that's just what they kept telling me, and they kept telling me throughout the years. Growing up, I did pass out at different points. Like when I was sick, I would easily pass out. I had a lot of pre-syncope. I did sports in high school. Wasn't good at sports, but I did sports, and I had a lot of almost passing out episodes, especially when I ran cross country, and I did not know why because I was actually pretty in shape in high school. I'm sorry that the lighting keeps going in and out. I'm trying to use natural lighting and it is kind of a cloudy day, so that's kind of annoying and I apologize. But anyways, and I had a lot of pre-syncope. I didn't know why. I was a pretty active person, so it didn't really make sense of why I was constantly always passing out or almost passing out. My heart rate was high a lot, which was really weird, but didn't think much about it. When I was 19 years old, I was working out, and thankfully my mom was with me, but I was on a stationary bike and my heart rate got so high, it got to like 205 I think, and I passed out, and I kept passing, like I'd start to come to and then I'd pass out again. I mean, they were giving me Gatorade, like crackers, like anything you can think of, and nothing was working. I just would try to sit up and pass back out, and we had no idea why. I went to my doctor, I told her what happened, and she gave me a Holter monitor, and I wore that, got the results back because, well, she started out with the blood sugar thing, and so they actually gave me like a blood sugar monitor, and those were totally normal, had no problems there. So that's when they moved on to the Holter monitor, and I got this through my primary care doctor at the time, and they got the results back, and I had an extremely high heart rate. A Holter monitor only tracks like what your heart's doing. It doesn't track your blood pressure or anything. I had one that was like the old-fashioned one where they you literally had to wear like this huge thing around your neck, and then they like stuck it in you. I think you wore it for like 2 or 3 days, and it came back that my heart rate was extremely high majority of the time. And like I think one time, I want to say I also had to track when I was having symptoms. Again, this was a really long time ago, so it's kind of hard to remember. One time, I remember this though, I was in a meeting for my job at the time, and my heart rate got to 205 sitting down, and I think it was because I got a little nervous, like somebody was arguing in the meeting, because I remember that because it was like on a specific day, and then when I went back for the results, they were like, what were you doing in this? And I was like, I know where I was. So I got referred out to a cardiologist, and at the time I lived in a different city, so I went to a cardiologist in that town, and he thought that I had like a problem, like not the circulation, but like how you're like the circuit of your heart or whatever, like I don't even know, can't remember what it was called because it really wasn't relevant to me. So he sent me to a cardiologist in Jacksonville, and they did another Holter monitor, went through all of these things. They were like, that is not the problem, but you do have a high heart rate. They didn't even worry about my blood pressure or anything, which I found really weird. But I did another Holter monitor, and they ended up diagnosing me with inappropriate sinus tachycardia, which is correct, I do have that. And they put me on a medicine called diltiazem. It helped some, like I wasn't really passing out, but I was still having all these problems, really didn't feel well. And I was on that for like 2 years and still having a lot of problems. I hadn't been diagnosed with anything else, so they didn't really know what was causing it. They just kind of told me like it was just like one of those things. And then fast forward to when I was 22, I moved to the city that I am currently in now, and I was going through it with my health issues. I felt awful all the time. It was super, super annoying, and I just was really at a loss and I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was just getting lightheaded all the time. I could not work out because anytime I tried to exercise, it just threw me into this episode of feeling like I was gonna pass out. I was still in the diltiazem. It wasn't doing what it was supposed to. It was so bad. So I actually got referred to an allergist. This is gonna be so weird. But my primary care doctor, I got a really good one here. They're amazing, and they referred me to an allergist because I also have very bad allergies. And I was telling my allergist all of this, and I was like, some of these things that I'm telling you, like they've been blaming these on my allergies, like fatigue and things like that. And I was giving her all of my symptoms, and she was like, I think you might have POTS. We have a lot of POTS patients and you sound like one. And I was like, I've never even heard that. So she was like, we have a really good electrophysiologist, I think is what they're called. Basically, they're like a cardiologist, and they also specialize in POTS. They might specialize in other things, but I know they specialize in POTS. So she referred me to him, and this was in September of 2021. And I told him all of my symptoms, and he was like, yeah, it definitely sounds like you have POTS. And I was like, really? Because I have been dealing with this for forever, and you know what? Like, nobody has helped me out. So what are we talking about here? So he then said, okay, we're gonna do a tilt table test. And if you don't know what a tilt table test is, basically they lay you down on a table and they strap you in. You're not supposed to be on any of like your heart medicines, like any like beta blockers or anything like that. I don't know about blood pressure. Obviously they'll tell you all these details when you go, but I personally was only on diltiazem, so I stopped taking that. And then they put you on a table, take your baseline heart rate and your baseline blood pressure while you're laying down, strap you in, and then they slowly bring you up, kind of like basically to where you're completely standing. You're still a little slanted, but not much. And then you stand there for 45 minutes and they measure your heart rate and your blood pressure and how they interact and all these different things. And I want to say that if your heart rate jumps 20 to 30 beats, like from like your baseline when they raise you up, that is kind of like the indication that you have POTS. Most people, I think it's also something about your blood pressure dropping, but that's not a necessarily like a thing you have to have. My blood pressure actually stayed stable throughout my entire test, so it was really kind of confusing, but my heart rate was all over the place, and it's still a problem that I have today, that my heart rate jumps around all the time, and we're trying to figure that out, like get that under control. But anyways, like my heart rate went like from like 70 to like, I don't know, like 120 or something. It was like really high, and I think my blood pressure dropped a little bit, but not much to really that you would say that would make a difference. I have more problems with my blood pressure now, but I will say I've always had very low blood pressure in general, so it doesn't take much for my blood pressure, like my blood pressure doesn't have to drop that much because it's already so low, but that is just for me personally. It's different for everyone. But anyways, so yeah, did that, and like I got my results that day. He was like, you're positive for POTS and we're gonna put you on some medication. And they also really advised me to make sure I hydrate. So I do. I drink a lot of BioLites, I drink a lot of water, salt, you know, salt your food. Sometimes I personally just take straight salt, it just depends. But we kind of went through all of that, and so they got me on some medication, and that seemed to help for a while. But then after I got diagnosed, I did okay. I was still having some problems, and then I was feeling better, and I really felt like the medicine was helping. And then this past year, I got I got COVID in August of 2022. And anytime that you get sick, first, in May of 2022, I got a septoplasty done. I have a video on that if you want to see it. I'll put it up here. But And that seemed to make my POTS worse because I also got a sinus infection when I had that. I got really sick and it was just like all these things. And then in August of 2022, I got COVID. And a lot of times when you get COVID, if you have POTS, it makes it worse. And it could take up to like 2 or 3 years, I think, before your POTS symptoms kind of come back down from getting COVID. And I started having a lot of problems after that. So they started kind of mixing up my medicines. And then just recently in October of 2022, I had to go to the hospital because I had such a bad POTS episode. My blood pressure bottomed out. I think it was like 72/42. I don't know what my heart rate was, but I literally like couldn't even, like I had to stay laying down. I couldn't raise my head up a bit without passing out, like, or starting to pass out. My dad had to call the ambulance. I like literally was just laying on the floor and I was like, call the ambulance, I'm not okay. Like my parents have never seen me so white. The ambulance got here and they're like, oh my gosh, girl, you have no color. And then I had to stay overnight at the hospital because of POTS, and now I'm kind of on a regimen that works pretty well for my blood pressure part. But I actually went to the cardiologist today and we're having to figure out something to help with my heart rate because it's still, since I do have inappropriate sinus tachycardia, it's getting too high. So we're gonna have to figure that out. But yeah, so that is kind of my POTS diagnosis story. I mean, there are so many symptoms to it and everybody's like story is different and symptoms are different, and I just kind of wanted to share mine, and it took a really long time to get here. I mean, like I said, I've had symptoms since I was 6 years old and I'm 23 now, and I got diagnosed at 22. So it took a really long time, and if you're still trying to get diagnosed, I promise eventually you will find somebody that will listen to you and you'll get there. And POTS is getting a lot more recognition now. It's a lot more common than people realize. Also, I would like to say that my POTS is caused by my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but you don't have to have Ehlers-Danlos to have POTS. My mom has POTS and she doesn't have Ehlers-Danlos. So that is kind of just an overview. If you have any other questions, you can leave them in the comments and I'll either respond, or if there's another video that I make about POTS, I do want to do a symptoms video if y'all want to see that. So anyways, thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next video. Bye friends.